reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Chronicles of Hope is essential reading for seekers of inspiration and spiritual empowerment. This series offers nourishment for those on a path of increased awareness at this challenging time. Inspired by higher sources of wisdom, Chronicles of Hope delivers messages to lift your spirit with a roadmap of hope and guidelines for living a life of expanded consciousness. The guides offer powerful insight for mental, emotional, and spiritual growth at this critical tipping point for humanity. The message is clear. We must change. We have the power to raise our vibrational energy individually and collectively before it's too late. I am Lois Herman, author of the best-selling Chronicles of Hope series and host of the Inspiring Hope radio show at WSMN.live or 95.3 FM. You can find me at loisherman.com or chroniclesofhope.net.
Welcome to Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman, a leading expert in professional coaching, clinical hypnosis, and energy clearing. Lois is an award-winning author of Chronicles of Hope. She has decades of experience in advanced hypnosis techniques, has conducted highly effective success coaching programs that have helped clients discover ways to achieve success, empower themselves, their families, as well as holistic practitioners to expand their practices. Get ready to be empowered with your host, Lois Herman.
Good, lovely day, and welcome to Inspiring Hope. I am your host, Lois Herman, and I'm here to inspire you with positive messages and celebrate people who are making a difference in our world. When we focus our thoughts and energies on truth, honesty, and integrity, we create powerful shifts that cause us to be more positive and peaceful. As we lift our energy, we empower everyone around us. If we each do what we can to make small shifts in awareness, we create ripples of hope. Join us as catalysts for positive change for our families, our communities, and our world at large. And I hope you're inspired by today's show. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the new year. With the Christmas season officially behind us, we can now take a look at what's in store for us this new year. Last year was full of surprises, exposures, and awareness building. As we learn from our past, our goal should be to implement and apply that knowledge toward our choices for this new day that will affect our future days. Surrounding ourselves with people we can trust is one choice we can make. When we are with the folks that we trust and enjoy, the energy is palpable, conducive to creative expression, comfortable and expansive. Kind of like last night's wonderful gathering, right, guys? Experiencing life on many levels, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, allows us to grow into our true, authentic self. We create or recall memories that were long forgotten when we were born into this lifetime. As we learn, we develop opportunities for expanded consciousness and become more open to know and grow. There are many tools that our ancestors used with great proficiency over the eons of time. One of those tools was the recognition of the powerful energy driven by our planetary systems. The cosmic push and pull of energy elicited by these huge moving bodies has long influenced our lives directly and indirectly. Those with knowledge and awareness are able to study these star patterns that guided the ancient Mayans, Egyptians, and native cultures around the world. Let us look to the stars and see what they may tell us about where we are today and what we might expect in the near future. With us today is an expert in astrological intelligence. Kaila Chiron shares some signs for our future. Let us pause for a moment and expand our thoughts to explore what may be in store for us in this cycle of change. You are listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman at WSMN.live or 95.3 FM. If you enjoy our content, please like, share, and subscribe to our Lois Herman Associates YouTube channel. Sign up for our newsletter at loisherman.com and join our community at chroniclesofhope.net. So in the studio with me is Kaila. Good morning. Good. We have to words have meaning. Mourn is sad. So I'm trying to keep from saying morning. I'm trying to say good day. Good, glorious day. How are you today?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. And it is a glorious morning. The sun's out. We've got a lot to be grateful for, especially your party last night. It was fabulous. I loved it.
I'm so
it was
glad.
really special. And I thank you for inviting me.
And you walked into a room full of people that you had no clue who any of them were.
No, but I felt like I was in a room full of old souls connecting from the past. So It was wonderful.
It truly was, wasn't it?
Yes.
Again, when you're around like-minded people with similar energy, it makes all the difference in the world.
It certainly does.
We don't have to guard what we're saying. We can just be authentic and share and be goofy and light and fun and without somebody, accusing or anything. It was wonderful.
It certainly was.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for having me there last night and here this morning.
Yay.
Yes.
And Art, you were there too.
Yes, I was.
Yeah?
And it was an amazing gathering.
Was it?
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for your hospitality.
Oh, you're welcome. What'd you think of the tree?
I thought that was amazing as well. I had never seen a tree like that. A traditional German Christmas tree. Is that?
Yes,
it
is.
Was the theme?
Yeah.
For that? Yeah.
It was
beautiful.
We light the real candles on the tree, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, don't you burn the house down!" But I've been doing this for 50 years, and no, I'm very cautious about how the candles are placed. But isn't it magical?
Oh, it was quite spectacular. I really enjoyed that part of it. It was amazing to see how well placed every candle was, and your explanation as to why it's that way. And it just it was great to see such a wonderfully lit, magnificent tree. I mean, I haven't seen one like that in a long, long time, and never with the actual candle burning on it. So that was impressive.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you were both there to enjoy. It's truly a special. To me, it sparks the new year. That's the whole point. Is it's the end of the Christmas season. I like to do it after the 12 days of Christmas, where everybody is okay. All the frenzy is gone. Now we can just relax and enjoy, and it's always that is a plan that I have. So
I'm looking forward to the next gathering in 24.
Yes, me too.
And then we'll carry on for 12 days.
Oh, that's it. We want to have a 12-day celebration.
Excellent.
Well, that leads us into why you're here with us. So one of the reasons I'm just glad to have you and to meet you. Met you through the DAR, and we had a wonderful discussion at our holiday gathering. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Kaila knows so much about astrology, and you just were spontaneously sharing stuff. And I'm like, I need to learn more. So tell us a little bit more about you, how you ended up getting into this. Tell us about your background first.
Well, I'm originally from the state of Maine. Lived most of my life there. I've traveled all over the United States and abroad, and have lived extensively in the Emirate of Dubai. And so I'm recently repatriated. Since 2014,
Wow.
I came back because I could see in this chart. I could see in the chart that something major was definitely going to happen, and I knew that it probably wouldn't, bode well for me to remain there.
Right.
And I knew I needed to come back home. I wasn't quite sure how it would unfold, but the signs were definitely there.
Wow.
And I'm glad I listened to my intuition about what I read in the chart. Even though it was my personal chart, I knew it was going to be a worldwide event. And it's proven to be interesting, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
So I have always had a love for astrology since I was a child. And I am formerly an owner of 2 New Age bookstores in Massachusetts many, many years ago.
Wow.
In the late 80s, early 90s. And I've learned a lot when it comes to the mysteries of life.
Sure.
Through all the literature and people that I have, bumped into over the years. So astrology really stuck with me. And I like it because it's cyclical.
Okay.
It's not like reading cards or using your psychic abilities that way, though you can incorporate that.
Sure.
It really has to do with dates and times and places and they repeat. Everything repeats. So you can rely on some of these things happening.
It's like the seasons of the year.
Exactly.
We know that, okay, we're in the middle of winter now, or the beginning, somewhere in the phase of winter, and we know, living in New England, that we're going to be facing the next couple of months of snow, but we also know that that's going to end.
Yes.
So that's what you're talking about with cyclical.
Yes.
That yes, we're going to be going through some changes, but there will be an end point.
Absolutely. And so back to when I was in Dubai, I was reading the charts ahead of time. I wanted to see what the problems were and how long they were going to last,
okay,
and get the clues to what they may be. So reading astrology is about symbols, and the language is connected to that. So every planet has a cycle, but it has the symbology with it. You have to decipher what it's going to mean.
Okay.
And that's where it gets kind of complicated. But back then, I could see that there were going to be some global changes by these bigger outer planetary aspects moving and changing.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. An aspect means that how the planets align with one another. That's an aspect. Is that correct?
That's true.
Okay.
But also, some of the bigger planets moving out of certain houses into another house can trigger and institute a greater change. For instance, we'll have Pluto going into Aquarius this year, but only for a little over 2.5 months, not quite 3 months. And that is going to be a big change. In 2008, Pluto did transition into the sign of Capricorn, which brought our financial crisis upon us.
Right.
So it's connected to that, because wherever Pluto goes, he rips everything up.
Okay.
He tears everything down. You
Right.
can hide nothing from him. And he cleans house to rebuild.
Okay.
So,
and the different houses that you're talking about, those are 12 houses in a cycle. Again, different cycles, and each different house, from what I understand, typically represents, like you said, finances. Another house might represent death, or another might represent relationships. Is that correct?
it is correct. So each sector of the zodiac is broken down by houses. It's like a door to an apartment.
Okay.
And when you go into that room or that apartment, you can expect certain things to happen there.
I see.
So your first house is usually about yourself, your body, your head, thoughts and stuff. And so the second house will have to do with, in each house, I have to say, has multiple meanings. So that's why it can be very complicated.
Sure.
But yes, each house has its own meaning. That's standard for everyone. The sign that's on that house is the landlord. And he tells you, what he expects of you when you're residing in his home.
I see.
Like his
Okay.
B&B.
Okay.
So
That's an interesting way of looking at it. So the first house is, they say it's ruled by Aries. Is that right?
yes.
Okay.
If you're doing like a global
Yep.
picture, it would be ruled by Aries.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. But again, the cusp is important to recognize, because that's a co-rulership
Okay.
with Aries. And whatever planet is there is a guest, and
I
will
see.
be doing, their rules while they're in your house, and you hope that they're going to be respectful.
So that's why the planetary cycles, they're cycling through these different houses.
Exactly.
And then they bring different aspects to the different houses.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So the aspects are like a telephone.
Okay.
So they play telephone or Zoom. They
Okay.
have Zoom meetings. Okay, I don't know.
I love
that's
this.
a good analogy,
Yeah.
but I think that is. And So when they get together and they agree, it's great. So that would be like a trine or a sextile.
Okay.
If they're in opposition to each other, well, we know what that can be.
Oh,
Trouble,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Yeah.
And the squares are usually irritations and that's going to motivate you to do something.
I see.
So those are the aspects. Those are the major aspects. There's
Okay.
a lot of little ones, but,
Yeah.
today
Yeah.
we're just dealing with the bigger ones.
Well, and I want to ask before we get much further, your name of your business is Kaila Chiron. And you came up with that name for your business for a specific reason. Can you explain what Chiron is and why you did that?
Yes. Chiron is an asteroid.
Okay.
He's located in every individual chart, as well as being in the, planetary sky. But Chiron represents the wounded healer.
Okay.
So it's usually a place that's a sore spot for us and something that we need to work through. Mm-hmm. And doing that through teaching or expressing ourselves with other people through connection. Mm-hmm. So I found it to be appropriate in my circumstance. So, I believe everybody's got a wound and they handle it in different ways. And so mine is communication. It sits in my third house of communication, transportation. I'm never usually on time, though I was lucky today, thank you God, that I was here on time. So learning to develop your communication skills and not be self-conscious, furthering your education, because there's always a feeling of don't know enough, not an expert enough. That's a Chiron wound with me. So I've decided, you know what, I'm going to embrace that. I'm going to take that energy and I'm going to work with it. So... And it's also in my third house with my Saturn. And Saturn is where you work and where you must work to get any reward or benefit.
Okay.
So you can't ignore him. So I said, well, he's there with Chiron for a reason. So I've got to pay attention to my community. I've got to learn whatever healing ability that I have and express that the best to my abilities and see what comes from it.
So people who have this perpetual need to be in taking classes and training and they don't have enough knowledge, they have to continue, they may well have a woundedness in that third house of communication expression.
It's one of those possibilities, yes. Yeah, I would look at it in a chart and see. Sometimes it's just aspected a certain way. Doesn't necessarily have to be in that house, but there could be an aspect to it.
Yeah.
But there's other things that can compose that. But yeah. But you're very on top of it. That's great. Yeah.
And then there's other people who are so bombastic that they can just go out there and speak to anything, and they really don't know a lot. Well, that's a different energy. That's somebody who's got that overly confident type of energy that, regardless of what they know, they have the ability just to express.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I never come across that way.
Well, I know that you've had to conquer that concern in order to be here today, and you're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So,
thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
So you were telling me that there are some things that are going on. Does this have to do with Pluto, where he's aspected right now? Is that you were telling me that we're going to be going through a period of chaos?
Well, we are, but this is long-term, big picture stuff. It's like I said, it began back in 2008 with our financial crisis.
Okay.
Pluto is the farthest planet. It takes a very, very long time for him to get around to each sign. Spends on the average to 20 to 30 years in a sign.
I see.
So it's powerful. And it's deep, long-lasting change. But it initially takes a little time to get it going.
I see.
It depends on how it's aspected, too, I have to say. So he's leaving. He's in the end degrees of Capricorn right now. Okay. And that's critical. So he's really cleaning up in that second house. In the second house of the United States, I should say.
Okay.
But Capricorn can be anywhere in the person's chart.
Capricorn is hard work, is that right?
It is.
Okay, like the mountain goat is Capricorn. Hard work, determination, perseverance, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
He's the financial,
okay,
the the financial district. He represents commerce, and I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
He takes over business in general.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the taskmaster. Mm-hmm. So he wants you to really pay attention to the details at times.
I see.
So with Pluto there, he sort of ripped up all the standard old rules, because Saturn also is about rules and regulations and sticking to the, everything that's important with regulations and courts and things like that. So Pluto's gone in, he's ripping up the rug, he's clearing everything out. Mm-hmm. And so that was part of that disruption. But he's also exposing the secrets and the lies, because that's what he does.
Right.
Because everything has to be clean, a clean slate, in order to progress into the next sign, which will
rebuild.
Be Aquarius.
Yeah.
So an Aquarius is a whole different ball game, because it has to do with the energy of Uranus, and Uranus is erratic.
Okay.
And sudden changes, it's upheaval, it's revolution.
Okay.
So there's a lot that's going to be initiated once he goes into that sign. But he's only dipping his toes in there for a short period, like I said before. And so we'll have to pay attention to these new things that appear in our life, because whatever decisions we make at that time, as minute as they might be, will have a very deep and penetrating effect on our lives for the next 20 to 30 years.
Interesting.
So individually, it's important to look at that, because you say, well, that might not affect my life. This might not affect me. Things such as AI or any kind of gaming or computers or information, media. I mean, all these different things that are represented by Aquarius, airways, messages. There's going to be some big revolutionary changes with that, and people might not feel it right away, but it is going to be there, and it is going to affect us. So,
and when does Pluto move then from Capricorn into Aquarius?
So he makes 3 moves.
Okay.
And it starts this year. First move is a planetary ingress to 0 degrees, moving into the sign of Aquarius at 8:14 a.m. and remains there until June 11th.
8:14. So
Eastern time.
On what day?
On I didn't put the date. No, March 23rd.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
So March 23rd.
So that's March 23rd.
So we're in this period of transition right now.
Mm-hmm.
Between now and March, there's a period of. So what does that mean?
Well, it's the beginning. It's actually, it started already in December a little bit.
Okay.
But we're really going to see larger changes the month of March.
Okay.
So, with Pluto being there, this is a time when it's the power of planting seeds. Mm-hmm. So if there's something you want, it's a very good time for you to put it out there.
Okay.
Work with it, but work with it in a non-manipulating manner.
Okay.
Release it, let it go, and let it manifest. And try not to control it too much. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good way to put it.
Like setting the intention for what you truly desire.
Right.
And then as you set the intention, expect the universe or appreciate the signs the universe gives you to make the new choices.
Exactly. So that sometimes we want things that aren't necessarily good for us. Mm-hmm. And we have good intention with that. But do you really want that? Mm-hmm. Because when you get it, you might get what you want, but it's certainly not what you wanted.
Well, I want to just interject that in the Chronicles, the Anquietus said, be careful. Wanting gives the feeling of lack. You're wanting. Be careful of your words. Even with that, the knowing is the best.
Yes.
Wanting, believing is the next step. I believe I can. Wanting means lack. I can't achieve this. I'm wanting for it. Believe I can do it, but knowing is the best. What is it that you know in your heart you wish to do? What is it that you know gives you joy that you do that gives others joy?
Yeah.
That would be the way that I would interpret setting an intention. What gives you joy to do and that gives joy to others?
That's how I would put it too. I think that's perfectly said. Again, I think right now with everybody having such a hard time financially, sometimes we get caught up in our day-to-day life and we just wish things could be so much different, and we want to find a way we can control things because that's our human nature. But again, it's not always the best thing to do. And I find that the month of March, there's a lot of times that we can really manifest things in a powerful way with this energy. But being aware and having self-awareness of what we really truly need from our heart and our soul for the betterment of ourselves and others, regardless of our current circumstance.
Correct.
Is really crucial at this time. And to be aware of how that impacts our future, not only for ourselves and our families, our community, but the whole planet. I see a lot of potential for environmental crisis. I see it being something that's going to probably escalate over the next coming years. We have to somehow come up with better ways, all forms of technology, to do things differently to help heal our lives personally and globally. Because we're at a critical point. We can see the changes in the weather. We can see the changes affecting our food chain and supplies. And we have to break out of the old. Saturn rules old things. He is old ways. Some of the traditions, not traditions, but some of the old ways of doing things, the old established ways. Those need to be looked at in a different new light and transformed. Not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but rebuilding and repairing and reinventing the way we do things and the way we live and the way we think is going to be critical.
So as an example, kind of like what just happened with the Speaker of the House.
Oh, yeah.
The group of these descendants, whatever, that were dissenters that were, challenging status quo. No, we're not going to allow this to continue. So there was definitely, I was just reading this morning, that there was an acquiescence where McCarthy agreed that there would be no more omnibus bills. I mean, there was a certain things that they got through in order to put him in position that he had to agree to certain conditions. And let's see if he holds to it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a classic example of the Saturn and the Pluto transitioning part and the later stages going into Aquarius, how we're going to have to do things differently. There will be compromises. I mean, we have to all get together and work together to make things happen, regardless of your political background. Because our future as individuals, as a country, in the our place in the world, depend on it. And again, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Trying to, we don't want to go to an extreme, because extremism will be a big thing coming, not only in this year, but the year following. On every imaginable aspect and way.
What do you mean?
Well, there's going to be, because Saturn is also changing signs. He's going to be going into the sign of Pisces. And we had that in the 60s. And Saturn's rules, boundaries, regulations. Pisces is, dissolves everything because it's ruled by the planet Neptune, and she just dissolves everything. So illusions, delusions, psychic energy, all that is open. There's no borders, no boundaries. There's, drunk judges. You know, it's like, anything goes. It's the 60s coming back again.
I see.
So there'll be a lot of false teachings. There'll be people who are trying to take the old information and twist it and make it fit their new program, which needs to be done to a certain degree, but you got to be careful.
We have to be aware.
You got to really be aware that,
Be aware of false prophets.
false prophets, false teachings, people taking bits and pieces from the old traditions and using it in a distorted, delusional way for their own purposes will definitely be coming up for people.
We were talking about that earlier, that there are people who are doing things that appear to be one way, but truly it's service to self. There's a different energy in people who are doing it for personal gain. How many followers can I get? How many of this? How many of that? Versus how can I make a difference? How can I be of service?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it's ego-driven or financially driven or both, which is even worse. So, we all have to be on the lookout for that externally and internally, believing our own, outdated beliefs, and sorting through it could be difficult because we all have our own individual truth, and we have to respect other people's truth,
right.
And we have to really try to get through the fog of that time period. And he'll be in that sign for 2.5 years.
Okay.
So you can see how this extends out into 2026.
Right.
So, yeah.
A lot of change coming up.
A lot of changes.
And a lot of introspective decision making from
Yes.
what you're saying.
Yes.
And many of us that have been on this path have started questioning everything, everybody we meet, we question. And everything that we've learned, we question. So it sounds like we need to continue that pattern of questioning, and more people will start to question. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I believe that that's healthy.
Okay.
I think the more open, honest, sincere dialogue for the sake of learning is critical.
Okay.
Not agenda. And not battle of the wits on who knows what and how much and all of that.
Right.
We should all be just sitting back and absorbing what we can and filtering out the best we can. And doing that by having biofeedback with people, regardless of your clan or your group. You should engage civil, tactful conversation.
Yeah, think about that.
That would be a wonderful thing. Though, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for a time to get to that point.
Okay.
Because as we start to see changes in the climate, the atmosphere, our environment, we start to subconsciously and soulfully take on energies of the erratic energy itself that's coming from the outer sky. And we may not be consciously aware of how it's affecting us and how we react to that in our daily lives when we interact with others. Causing problems, making us a little bit more irritable because everything else is irritable. And it's not necessarily the person who's doing something, but we perceive it that way.
Because of the energy aspect.
Exactly. And so how do we, how is the average person going to be able to shift out of that sort of lower consciousness, subconsciously, into a higher consciousness, consciously, and be fully engaged and attentive and saying, okay, so is this me? Is it them? Or is it just what's going on? That's a lot of work. And my hopes is that people will be able to somehow connect with within themselves and have that awareness for the purpose of healing. Because if we keep going on this path, it's not looking good.
So we have a choice, even though the planets are
Absolutely.
aspected in certain ways. Humanity has choices that they can make.
Absolutely. And that's part of why I read the charts that I do, because it's a guidebook of cosmic weather to tell you, now at this time, there's a possibility that this is going to happen for you. These are your choices. I never give advice. I always lay out what I see as a choice and saying, well, this is indicating, this might happen for you. And so here are your choices. And,
And the outcomes are based on the choice that you make at any given moment in time.
Absolutely. And that's with anything.
Right.
So I wish when I was younger that I had had someone, an astrologer, who would have said, hey, look, you got a choice, because I didn't think that. And a lot of people do believe sometimes their back is up against the corner. They don't think they have a lot of choices. But it's perspective. And so once you adjust your perspective and you see, oh, wait a minute, what if I do this? What if I don't do that? How can I change this? Well, all right then. Now I know what I need to do. And you can be more confident about that.
And by going within and asking yourself these different questions about choice, there is a sense that you get about which choice is actually feels better, is better at any given moment in time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's trusting your inner self, your intuition,
Everybody's always looking outside
Yes.
for the keys and for the answers. Let me ask somebody else. Let me reach out there instead of paying attention to what the inner voice is saying.
Absolutely. And some can call that God consciousness or speaking with spirit guide, or there's many. It's all the same. It's all the same. And I think to, split hairs over it is kind of ridiculous. I think, if it works for you, use it. If it's not working for you, it will come to you if you ask.
And that also has to do with each individual's patterns of the stars when they were born. So each of us has our own sun sign, our own chart, astrological chart, that tends to portray our personality, our choice points, etc. So how does that affect us? Because different people's personas are oftentimes based on where the planets were
at the time of birth. So the sun usually represents the purpose, the life mission. It also is how people perceive you. Wherever your sun is placed, what sign that's placed in. Say I have a sun in Virgo, 9th house. So that means people are going to probably perceive me as a nitpicky, detailed orientated.
Very detail oriented, yes. Yeah.
Someone who likes to talk philosophies, who likes to talk about universal things, travel, those, even sometimes politics. So, but that's not necessarily who I am. Who I really am and who you would really be is your rising sign.
I see.
That is your personality. That is how you're going to express yourself through your purpose and mission of the sun sign. And your moon, wherever that's placed, really speaks to what your heart is doing, where your emotions are, where you get emotional, where you bond or don't bond with others. It's very impactful. You sometimes have to, for some people, they have to learn how to work with that moon energy. The moon has a very changing personality. So depending on the house placement and sign that it's in, it can be quite interesting. So
that's interesting, and you're right, because the moon, it goes through all these phases every month. So it changes daily.
It does. The moon usually takes 2 days to go through a sign. Sometimes not as long, and you can notice sharp emotional changes in people when it transits into a different sign. Or havoc when it goes void of course.
Well, then that kind of makes sense. Speaking of the sun sign and the ascent, I had often heard that as you mature, you become more like your ascent. So the sun sign is the outer impression that people have of you, but your ascent sign is what your mission or what you are destined to do, how you're expressing. So as we get older, we tend to be more who we are destined to be.
Well, that's true to a certain degree, but a progressed chart.
Okay.
Now, people do progress charts. I don't necessarily do them, but the progress chart shows how you have matured, how you've gone through your lesson of the first or second quarter of your life, and now your sign can actually, it usually changes completely. So even though you're always going to be an Aries rising, it could skip a whole sign or two signs as progressed because you've learned those lessons of boldness and being a pioneer. Some nice aspects of Aries. And now you need to take on maybe something a little bit more practical. So it could move into, Taurus, the sign next to it. So people may not necessarily recognize that in you. Say family members, they'll say, well, she's changed. She's not as bold. She's a little bit more stubborn now, or she's a little bit more relaxed. But yeah, she's still Lois, but people who meet you for the first time will probably recognize more of your qualities of your progress chart. So
my sun sign is in Scorpio, and my ascent is in Capricorn.
It is. But again, I wouldn't know how it's progressed until I actually did a chart.
Exactly.
And there's different factors for that.
Well, I'm curious about something that I had never heard before.
Okay.
And you had said something about having
Intercepted chart.
An intercepted chart. Yeah. That was fascinating. Having been in the field of ultrasound, dating for births and C-sections and being around birthing of babies for so many years, I didn't realize that there are different charts for the babies.
Well, they are. And it really depends on the house systems that you use. And every astrologer uses their own system that they've loved and, they worked with for years. I use a Koch system. I find it's the most modern system to use. We can update astrology. It's okay. And I have discovered that more often than not, when I come across an intercepted house in that system, and what that means is that there's not 12 individual cusp signs on your ring in the house. So normally each house has its own individual cusp. Here, one is actually sort of trapped, imprisoned inside a house, so it doesn't show up. The energy is stuck there, and it's an issue for you because people aren't recognizing those qualities or those energies that you need to express. In your chart, it happens to be Virgo in your 8th house. So people can see the Leo aspect, or they can see the Libra aspect of you in the 8th house, but they don't really know and understand how powerful having Virgo in your 8th house, that energy, you need to be able to express it or release it or deal with it in some way.
So what would make you have an intercepted chart?
So and I do find with intercepted charts, a lot of times there was some kind of a complication or some kind of an issue regarding the birth or the birth time. The mother could have had a problem carrying. There's always something there to be noted. For instance, in my case, I was actually, my mother picked my time and date of birth to have me, cesarean section. And it was, at that time, sort of a progressive technique that the doctors in the Naval Hospital were trying to use, was the story that was told to me. So I was not actually born on the day that the heavens really intended me to be born on. It's sort of like the sky opens up and says, oh, she's got to go, and now's the time. But I still carry the energies of when I was supposed to be born.
I see.
So what I do is if I come across that situation, I will read the chart as I see it, plus do a whole sign chart and overlap those charts so that I can see what the true destiny was supposed to be that didn't get fulfilled, and the current destiny and how it is being fulfilled, and how can we bridge those two so that you could possibly live out this life, this incarnation, in a more fulfilled manner on purpose,
So
originally intended.
would this be appropriate for preemies, somebody that was born prematurely? When they were,
Absolutely.
so say they're born at 7 or 8 months, and they were, they didn't go to full term, so they're born in a completely different sign than they were destined to be.
It more than likely it's going to pop up.
Okay.
Not always. I can't say that's with every case, but I have seen that trend, and I do pay attention to it because I think it's profound.
That's interesting.
I think people like myself who's experienced that, there's always this haunting sense of, I should have done something differently. I'm not really at the right place at the right time. And the fact that I'm always a little late or a little too early, or, something's always a little off. Finding my space and where I belong in a group or anything, really. Since I've been doing this technique, I find it easier. And it opens up a whole new avenue for me of possibilities to choose from.
Now you can choose.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so
That's
yeah.
that's very fascinating.
Yeah.
Another question I wanted to actually, Anne asked the question last week on our show when we were talking about that the original calendar was based on the lunar cycles, that we really shouldn't be in a 12-month cycle. It should be 13 months of 28 days or something like that. What, astrologically, how would that line up?
Well, there's a lot of debate in the astrological community about that because, the signs are the signs based on the actual planets. Okay. And the mythology that's connected with them. And that's kind of how we got into our Gregorian system, but they altered it a little bit because they wanted to incorporate the old pagan ways and have control over the masses. So technically, astrologically, we need to stick with what's in the heavens, what's planet-based. And we do use the moon in her changing of the cycles. So that really has nothing to do with an actual sign, because the moon has her own sign, Cancer. So, and she has only one sign. So that she's already represented there, and she transits each house. She gets to light it up or be dark in it. So that really doesn't have an effect on the calendar itself. So that's all I can really speak to. As
you
far
mentioned
as that
the Jewish calendar, they still use the old calendar. They consider the Gregorian as truly a Christian-based calendar.
Right. So they use an astrological calendar. So they use the Gregorian too. I can't say they don't use it because we all do. We've forced into that.
Right.
But tradition is that they celebrate a ritual at the beginning of every month, and when it's actually the moon is changing signs, and women do not work on that time. During that time, it's
the moon time.
The moon time, and it's a beautiful ritual. And yes, so every month they'll do a sort of like little connection to that energy of the month. Now, not every Jewish person is practicing that method, but that is something that I have come across personally, and I find it very useful. And so that's how they also break down their festivals, their calendar of festivals. So Aries is the new year, and so when the solstice comes in and the sun and the moon actually conjoin in the sign of Aries, that is our new beginning.
And when is that?
That's on the solstice, the equinox, the spring equinox every year.
Right.
So,
between March and April.
That's right. And it's a rebirth. It's the 21st. So between the evening at sunset, usually, it's celebrated on the 20th and then through the day on the 21st. So it'll happen within that time period. And so that's the true, real earth mundane calendar that our bodies are naturally in tune to. So this artificial calendar that we've been put into is mechanical, and it doesn't necessarily work very well for us, but we have to use it because the powers that be say we do.
Until we change.
That's right, until we change.
Until we challenge it and change it.
Yes.
So what do you see? We have about 5 minutes left.
Wow,
I know
gone.
it goes fast.
I haven't even
I
touched
told-
any of the topics I was.
So tell me what's the main topic that you want to touch? What's going to happen over this next couple of months? Because I'll definitely have you back on.
Oh, okay.
So over the next couple of months, we can expect change. We can expect chaos. We can expect making choices, cleaning house.
Yeah, I say that. See, a big part of what's going on right now too is that the planet Mars has also been retrograde in Gemini, which means Mars is a person who's bold with action and wants to get things done. In the sign of Gemini, which is communications, transportation, relationships, that kind of thing, has been stifled and is reworking that energy. So we are all looking back and saying, how could I have done that different? How can this unfold different in the future? And right now, Mercury just went retrograde, so communications again are, let's slow down, let's look at the past, let's try to see what we could do different. What did I miss? I need to look at this file again. Hold on, I'll catch up with you, Mars. We'll get together. We'll talk about this by aspect. Well, they're both going to change. By the 18th, they're both going to be going
18th of January.
They're both going to be direct.
Okay.
And that's going to free up a lot of stuff.
Okay.
You're going to be able to take, forward movement easier. Communications will be easier. Any projects that you may have wanted to start, I would say wait a little bit longer when Jupiter is really full-blown into the sign of Aries, and you'll need to act quickly then. But I see this as a time of getting our act together.
Okay.
The month of January in February. March is when things are going to start opening up, and all your options are going to be there. And you might get overwhelmed with them personally. And again, that's why I'm stressing, you really got to try to hold on and say, hey, wait a minute, I know this all sounds wonderful, and yeah, I asked for some of this stuff, but beware, because there might be some stuff hidden in the contract.
Be careful what you ask for.
Right.
You've got to be very clear. Yeah.
And it will take time. It will slowly unfold, but when it does, look out, because there'll be no turning back from that part of it. But fortunately, we will get a reprieve from that once June comes, and then we'll have other aspects to deal with. And maybe we can talk more about that in another episode, because that will
Absolutely. And I know that you said once Pluto moves into this next sign, he'll be there for 20 years. So you had mentioned that there would be 20 years of rebuilding.
Rebuilding, yes. And this is the first of the 3 times he actually makes movement. So he's going to ingress for a short period into the sign of Aquarius. We get the prelude to the kiss, so to speak.
Okay.
We get to see the trailer to the movie. And then he'll move back into Capricorn for one last time to get rid of all the dead wood. And there'll be no turning back from that point. So truth seekers will be busy. So, and then he'll go back retrograding into the sign of Aquarius again, where he's going to want to stay there permanently. And then that's when the show's over.
All right, you are coming back. Kaila Chiron. And I'll put how to get a hold of her, KailaChiron.astrology. And I'll put that in the text. Until next time, everyone, look up, stay positive, and be the light in someone's day. God bless.
WSMN